G'day guys, I'm D-Mac from NBA Fantasy Bible and along with me is Kayla Fonte. And together we are Between Two Hoops. Kayla, how are you going?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Doing really well. Now, we have delayed our show. Normally we film on a Monday and release it for the brand new week. I've been away on vacation. How's your week been?
It's been really good. How was your vacation?
Yeah, went to Singapore. It was awesome, and it was
Awesome.
just my wife and myself. Left the kids here with the grandparents, which is always nice. Whirlwind sort of trip, 4 days only, but crammed in a lot of stuff. Was still able to tweet and engage with some followers on Twitter, which is always fun. But keen to get into our show. Now we're only doing one show this week, just because of the time constraints and my vacation sort of taking up some of our time. But today we're getting into our buy lows and sell highs. Shall we get into it?
Let's do it.
All right. Buy lows and sell highs, obviously headlined by De'Aaron Fox and Joel Embiid, but we'll get into it. Firstly, we'll start off with the review of what we had last week. So we talked about our buy lows and sell highs from last week, and we'll just quickly go through the numbers from last week, starting with our buy lows. We said Paul George was one of our massive buy lows, and he still is. But you can see the numbers from the season rank as of last week, 139th in 9cat. Last 7 days, 105th. So not outstanding. We won't call that a win for us, but he's still got huge room for improvement there. So we'll go through the numbers very shortly. We'll go line by line through each of these guys. But a lot of room for improvement for Paul George. D'Angelo Russell, that's a loss for us. I'm not sure where he's at. What do you think about D'Lo?
Yeah, I think it's been interesting because I did see a report saying that now the Lakers are hesitant to trade him just because he's started to play a little bit better in his bench role. Obviously, like it hasn't really been reflected as much in fantasy leagues, but I mean the real life impact. So this could be something that's here to stay.
Yeah, and we're seeing the ascension, obviously the massive game from Dalton Connect. Rui
Mhm.
Hachimura still has to come back. Austin Reeves has had a really good season, a little bit quieter over the last 7 days. But yeah, D'Angelo Russell's just trying to get to that 30-minute mark each game, and he's really struggling to get to that. But disappointing so far this season. So tough one to read at this stage. Jimmy Butler, now look at that one. Huge buy low from last week, 132nd in 9cat, 64th in points. Yes, he's only had one game back in the last 7 days, but ranked first in 9cat and ninth in points. I think just with his history and his tendency to sit games, I think if you can, he had a massive game in that one return game. I would try to sell high right now. But yeah, that was a big win for us in terms of the buy lows. Jaylen Brown still hovering around that 80th mark in the season ranks, but still a bit of a win there for us. Jalen Duren, now it looks like a loss. So 127th was his 9cat ranking this time last week. Over the last 7 days, only 149th, but in the last game, he had a monster game. So keep that in mind as well when you're thinking about your buy lows and sell highs. I don't think you can buy low on him at this point just because people have that recency bias and look at his last game. So it's going to be hard to buy low at this stage, but just keep that in mind. But yeah, for us, he was a big buy low. Mikal Bridges, much improved. So 98th in 9cat, up to 65th. And that's just a little bit more efficient as well. And Cat did miss a game, maybe two. I think he missed at least one game. So he had a little bit more usage in that game as well. Jamal Murray, huge improvement. Yes, also Nikola Jokic has sat out the last 3 games as well for personal reasons. I haven't heard too much about Jokic. Hopefully all is okay. Have you heard anything there, Kayla?
I haven't heard anything. Yeah, it's just personal reasons. They haven't really disclosed anything, and obviously, like it is a private thing. But yeah, I don't know when he's gonna be back either.
Yeah, and I've got him in quite a few leagues, and obviously it's a huge hole in your team when you're missing the number one fantasy player from your team. But Jamal Murray has stepped up, so that's a really nice improvement. A lot of people are really hesitant to draft him this season, just coming off of the back of a really disappointing Olympics for Team Canada. But I had no hesitation in grabbing him, and I have him in a couple of leagues. Do you have him in any leagues?
I have him in about 2 or 3, but he's always good in, like, the mid rounds, like 5th to 6th round. I don't think he can go wrong, especially with his
Yeah.
assist numbers.
Yeah, and I think it's solid. And people were pretty frightened just with that 119th rank at this point last week. But yeah, he's really come back, looking really fresh at the moment. Larry Markkinen, it's a hard one to read. Yeah, slightly
Mhm.
improved from this time last week, but just with the Jazz, they're tanking. They've got nothing to play for. His numbers will improve, and yeah, he's a great player. But long term, if you're playing in head to head, it's a buyer beware. And we did say buy low, but it depends on how low. I wouldn't be going too high for him. Not sure how high you'd go for Lowry, Kayla.
Not super high. I mean, a lot of people were taking him in, like, the 3rd round. It's a little bit of a tricky one because I think he's just gonna keep going up and down throughout the whole season. That's the thing. It's hard because they're tanking.
Yeah, exactly right. So it's a bit of a buyer beware, and obviously having less of an impact in points leagues, he's more suited to category leagues. But yeah, just be mindful of that tanking Jazz team. Alperen Şengün, yeah, he's really turned it around. It's come back to his shooting percentages. So nice bounce back for him. And Trey Young, he was on our buy low just because he did miss a game and he came back a little bit slowly. But over the last 7 days, even more disappointing. So he's back on our buy low list for this week, which we'll take you through right now. Starting with Joel Embiid, he's played 2 games since coming back from injury, and those 2 games have been really disappointing. So obviously, small sample size, but 125th ranked 9-cap player. Thank you, hashtag basketball again, obviously, for these numbers. 85th in points leagues. Are you buying low on him or are you staying well clear of Joel Embiid?
I am staying clear. I didn't draft him in any leagues, especially because he didn't fall far enough for me to be willing to take that chance. But I just think there's also gonna be so many buy low opportunities for Embiid throughout the year. So if you really want him and you don't get him now, don't worry. That time is still coming.
That's a really good point. Yeah, I think he may be on this list quite a few times over the next few weeks as well. But I still think it's a great buy low opportunity. Obviously, we're not offering a first rounder at this point in time, but um, would you go as high as someone in the 3rd round currently? Would you go, okay, I'll give you a hypothetical, someone in the 3rd round, I think Jordan Poole is close to 3rd round value. Would you go Jordan Poole or Joel Embiid?
Pool. I'd rather have Pool. I
You'd
don't
rather
think I
have
can
Poole.
trust Embiid. Yeah,
Wow.
honestly, it's just like it just comes down to him being available. That's the biggest thing. Like we all know what he can do on the court, but it's just being there. And that's the biggest thing for me right now, especially when you're not in a roto league.
Yeah, people talk about the 10th category being availability and being able to
Mhm.
get on the court. So yeah, I'll take that. But yeah, Paul over Embiid, that is interesting. Would love to get people's thoughts on that one. His teammate Paul George, obviously he's got room for improvement as well. Are you more open to getting Paul George on your roster?
I am a little bit more. Embiid just makes me worried, which is why I'm less likely to take a chance with him. But yeah, Paul George for the right price, I probably would. Yeah.
All right. We spoke about Trey Young in the previous segment, but yeah, he's a huge buy low, and he's just been shooting horribly. In the last
Mhm.
game, I think he dished out maybe 16 assists, if I'm not wrong, but he was having a poor shooting night, decided he was just going to facilitate that evening, and that's fine. Huge elite assist numbers, but the shooting and the points needs to turn around, and this is your opportunity to buy low. He did come back from a game absence with which was an Achilles tendonitis, so something to monitor. But I think that may have impacted him in that return game. So I think it's a huge buy low. What are your thoughts on Trey?
Yeah, the points have definitely been a bit surprising, especially with DeJounte Murray gone. I thought that he would be more consistent and more of a higher scorer, but it's also the turnovers that have really burned you. I mean, when you draft someone like Young, you know that turnovers are going to be a problem. I believe he did lead the league last year in turnovers with 4.4 or something like that. But once we get into the numbers later and you see what he averaged over the past week, it's shocking. It's bad.
Yeah, and for those that, which is a very common punt or in an 8-cat sort of situation, if you disregard turnovers, still of great value. And I do have a league where I am clearly punting turnovers. I've got the likes of Trey Young, I've got James Harden, I've got a few of these types of guys as well. So none of concern for me. So again, depending on the build of your team, it could be a great situation to try to acquire Trey Young. Desmond Bain, he's been very disappointing this season. Not sure what's happening, but 208th ranked 9-cap player in the last 7 days. What's going on with Desmond?
I think maybe we can attribute some of that to him returning from an injury. at least that I would like to, because Bane is one of my favorite fantasy players. But yeah, I don't know what's going on, especially with the Grizzlies being so shorthanded too. You would expect him to step up when he's on the court. I think it's something that he'll be able to turn around from in the coming weeks, though.
I think so. And as you alluded to earlier, we'll go through the numbers of these guys very shortly so we can see where there is room for positive regression. Tobias Harris, he was a very solid mid round draft type of guy this season. A lot of people, a lot of analysts as well, were very high on Tobias Harris. He's been underwhelming this season, very inconsistent. But in the last 7 days, it seemed like he was turning things around, just getting some nice counting stats, but still 154th and 9 cat. 97th in points league, so a little bit better from that perspective. But yeah, hugely disappointing. And again, we'll take you through those numbers shortly. Alex Sarr, what are your thoughts on Alex Sarr? Are you holding him in all of your 12-team leagues?
I am holding him. I think he's a nice stash. We've talked about this several times, but the Wizards aren't really a competing team. So I still think he's going to see a lot of opportunities down the stretch. I'm not really too worried about playing time or anything like that. But we always see this with rookies where they go through slumps and things like that. So I'm not super worried, and I just kind of want to monitor it and see how things play out.
I've got him on a couple of my teams, and I'm not worried whatsoever. They are
Mm.
category leagues. He's only playing about 26, 27 minutes per game. So again, he's got room to improve on that, get bigger numbers there. Valanciunas is playing really solid basketball in limited minutes, but moving down the stretch, I think closer to the end of the season, he's going to be close to top 50, top 69 cat value, in my opinion, just with those really elite blocks. He's also providing some nice steals. But yeah, for me, solid hold in category leagues for 12 teamers. Less so in points. I could probably do without him in a 12-team point situation. But it is interesting to see that he was better in points leagues over the last 7 days than he was in cat leagues. And we'll take you through his shooting numbers very shortly. Jalen Suggs, very similar situation, but his shooting from the field has been horrific over the last 7 days. And quite frankly, ever since Paolo Banchero has been injured. It's actually impacted his shooting ability for whatever reason that is. But his other numbers are still really solid. So if people are so worried about just rankings, I think getting him now is a great opportunity before Banchero returns. What do you think of Jalen Suggs?
Oh, definitely. Like when you look at that ranking of almost 200, I mean, especially if you're not diving into the stats, I think a lot more people will be willing to get rid of him. But I mean, he showed a lot of flashes of his potential and he's looked pretty good this season. So I'm not too worried about it either. We were even talking about this earlier. When Paolo Banchero returns, he'll probably do a lot better as well. So I'm not worried.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. Now, our guy from preseason, Norman Powell, very disappointing last 7 days, and he could actually miss today's game with injury as well.
Yeah, I think he already is listed as out, which is unfortunate. So yeah, that injury is definitely going to play a role in dropping his ranking. But again, like I'm not worried with that either. Kawhi Leonard is still out for quite a long period of time, so he's still going to have those opportunities, and it's just monitoring that injury to see when he comes back.
And I think you mentioned it to me earlier. Is it bobblehead night
It
for the
is. It's
Clippers
his
for
bobblehead
him?
day.
Ah, no. So he
Yeah,
could potentially, he will be missing his own night there.
yeah. At least he'll still be
Yeah.
there, but still, it's rough to not see him on the court.
That is rough. That is rough. Now, two buy lows, and that's not necessarily related to rankings, but it is just because they have been injured and have been sidelined for quite some time. But I think now is the time to strike. We've mentioned these guys in previous episodes, particularly Scotty Barnes, your boy Scotty Barnes, but he should be back on the court very shortly. So managers that are copping a lot of injuries and just needing to get some bodies on the court or from their fantasy team might be willing to let DeJounte and Scotty Barnes go for probably less than what they are actually worth.
Especially with DeJounte too. I think once he returns, he might turn into a sell high as he starts to ramp up just because the Pelicans are so shorthanded right now. So that value will
Yeah,
be there.
that's right. And he may return before Zion does as well. So that'll be
Mhm.
very interesting to see how that all plays out. But yeah, both of those guys are solid buy lows for us. Let's take you through the numbers, starting with Joel Embiid. So we'll take you through why we think all of these guys are buy lows and how they can improve. But look at those field goal percentage. We're not used to that from Joel Embiid, and he's rusty. He's been
Mhm.
out for quite some time. Turnovers are really high as well, so that's impacting his 9-cat ranking, but of course his points league ranking as well. The minutes are solid straight off the bat, really solid minutes. but he's just out of touch at the moment. So 0.5 3-pointers per game as well. So just 1 3-pointer over the first 2 games. It's unlike Embiid, but like you said, it's a little bit buyer beware depending on how risky you want to go.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think though so too, especially when you keep missing so many games and you return for a couple and then you miss more games, it's hard to develop that rhythm, which I think is also playing a major role. But even look at the points too. Like he's averaging about half of what he did last season. And it's
Mm.
obviously it is hard to do that in such a small sample size.
You raise a good point about the rhythm, though, and trying to get that synergy, getting all the bodies back on court. Tyrese Maxey is questionable for tonight as well. So getting
Mhm.
Maxey, who I hear reports he actually challenged Embiid for being tardy, being late um, as well. So that's a good sign of good leadership from a young guy. But getting all these guys back on court, building that synergy. You've got Jared McCain, who will appear in our sell high segment as well. So spoiler alert there, but getting these guys to get into rhythm, get in synergy before it gets to, and I'm assuming that Philadelphia will be contending for playoffs as well. I'd like to think so. They're pretty loaded with talent. You need these guys playing enough games. So perhaps that just forces Embiid to play a little bit more as well. So they haven't been very impressive without these guys on the court. So I think maybe that's a glimmer of hope that he stays on the court for longer and perhaps plays more than we actually think. But yeah, maybe I'm clutching at straws here. His teammate, Paul George, again, very similar situation where he's just shooting really poorly, just rusty. But this is a very small sample size over the last 7 days. So 2 games there, but yeah, 32% from the field. 3 turnovers is a negative, but again, a lot of people disregard that. Free throws, pretty disappointing for him. We're used to seeing that around that 85% mark. But again, that's easily turned around. 3.5 steals is really impressive as well. So he's engaged on defense. He just needs to turn it around on the other end of the court.
Yeah, the shooting splits have been rough, but also I think the steals are definitely unsustainable. And when you're looking at most of these stats here, like nothing really stands out outside of the steals and assists.
Yeah, and I would pencil him in, if not just, I think it's a real definite that he'll be a top 40, easy top 30 guy, in my opinion. I don't know if he can get close to that second round value, maybe third round value, but yeah, we'll see where it goes. But at this stage, 105th over the last 7 days and 9 cat, yeah, huge room for improvement. That points league rank is actually pretty impressive, and that just shows how poorly he shot the ball. Counting
Mhm.
stats are still pretty impressive. Next one, Trey Young, spoke about him, but he is ice cold from the field, 34.2% from the field, 5.7 turnovers. You said that he was close to leading the league, if not led the league in turnovers last season. 5.7 over the last 7 days. Yeah, that's horrific. But again, for those that punt that category, it's not of concern. So I'm not concerned. I've got him in a few spots and I do punt turnovers automatically. But I think the field goals can definitely go up and the scoring, of course, will go up. 18 points per game over the last 3 games is really poor for him. That's substandard. So I expect that to quickly rise.
Yeah, if you're punting field goal and turnovers, like that doesn't really matter. But when you're still looking at the points, 18, like that's not something that you would expect from the leading star on a team. Like you're looking at closer to 25, right?
Yep. Yeah, and I think you would expect 1 steal, 1.0, 1.1 steals per game as well. So
Mhm.
0.7 doesn't seem like a lot, but it does impact that ranking significantly. Next one, we spoke about Desmond Bain. By the way, I just love this photo. I'll use this photo every single time we talk about Desmond Bain. But again, very similar theme here, but the shooting splits really hurt his 9-cat value, but 37% from the field and over the last 3 games, and uncharacteristically pretty poor from the field free throw line.
Yeah, and even the points too, like 11 per game. Last season he was averaging about 20. Obviously, that was because of injuries. But even this season too, I think he was in the high teens, like maybe 18-ish. So that's very surprising. But then again, you look at the efficiency here, and that's why you can see that huge discrepancy between points and category leagues.
Yeah, and you'd expect the field goal percentage to go up, which means the 3-pointers will go up, which means the points will go up. So everything is all aligned there. So I expect him to quickly improve. Spoke about Tobias Harris. It's the shooting. Yeah, 37%. We're used to him being closer to that 50% mark. So I'd expect him to improve on that. He's never been known for a guy that gets huge defensive stats, but we have seen over the last few seasons that he's getting close to 1 steal a game. He's always been efficient with his low turnovers, but again, I don't see a huge value in that unless he's putting up bigger assist numbers. 2.8 is pretty fine for him. That's not what we expect from Tobias Harris, but we need more points. We need more efficiency from the field moving forward.
Mhm.
Next one, Alex Sarr. Look at those defensive stats. 1.3 steals and 1.3 blocks over the last 7 days, but it's been a really poor week for him. It's the shooting. We alluded to it before. It's the shooting that's really brought him down. And I did tweet out yesterday that I think he was 7th. He was the 7th most dropped player yesterday, which for me is, that's too high on that board. I don't think he needs to be dropped, particularly in category leagues.
Yeah, just because he has that long-term potential too. And we've even seen with a lot of rookies this year that the field goal percentage, free throw percentage, those have all been fluctuating a lot. And they're common rookie struggles, so I'm not super worried about it. But the potential is there, which is why I would rather stash than drop.
Yeah, and I always say to myself, if I'm considering a drop, will someone pick up the guy that I've just dropped? And that will usually indicate whether or not I should be holding or should be moving away. And again, it comes down to your team build as well. You don't have to hold a guy if he's not actually going to help you get the W's each week. It's not that important because it is also quite difficult to execute certain trades. But for me, solid hold in 9-cat. Less of a priority in points leagues, but he's still putting up decent numbers there. No,
Mm.
question for you as the points league aficionado. Are you holding him in 12s in points leagues?
If there was no better waiver wire pickups, I probably would. I would stash him just because of that potential that I mentioned. But if he's my worst player, then I wouldn't feel bad about moving on from him.
Yeah, I think you could stream that slot and probably
Yeah.
get more success there. Jalen Suggs, again, it's the shooting, but hey, pretty impressive from the free throw line. We haven't seen that in previous
Mhm.
seasons, and he's been consistent across the entire season from the free throw line. It's the field goals that's killing him right now and the turnovers. So, similar to some of the other guys we spoke about there, but 28.6% from the field on 14 attempts per game over the last 3. Yeah, it's killing you right now.
Yeah, and he's still getting those 13 points per game at least, which is still decent, and the stocks too, which you can depend on him for. But like we mentioned before, if you're punting, field goal percentage or turnovers, then it's not really a big deal.
Yeah, and if that field goal percentage goes up just marginally, you think he could be getting 18 points per game quite easily. The stocks are still solid. The defensive stats are beautiful. And we come to expect that from Jalen Suggs. Spoke about your guy. He is injured. He's going to miss at least one game, but it's the shooting. It comes down to that shooting once again.
Mhm. Definitely. And I think he's going to be able to bounce back once he's healthy.
Yeah, easily. We won't ponder on that one too much. Scotty Barnes, he should be back in the next, I'm thinking in the next week. I think that is a reasonable estimation. Could be within the
Mhm.
next 2 weeks, but let's wait for more updates on that one. But again, even if you just looked at overall NICAT ranking, small sample size, but 95th for someone who was getting drafted probably in that early second round in 12 teamers.
Yeah, I'm just looking here too. It says that he was reevaluated on the 19th. Hasn't really been many updates though around that. But yeah, I think about a week is reasonable.
Yep. And finally, DeJounte Murray, again, only played one game, 120th and 9-cat. And again, it comes down to that field goal percentage. We're not going to put too much stock on this one game that he has played because he was injured as well following this game. 26th in points league for that single game. It tells you like he almost triple doubled in this game, and that could be a
Mhm.
sign of things to come. So huge upside for him. And I think even when everyone's healthy, he's going to have a really solid season.
I think so too. I think it's a good this was a good trade for him. And the other thing is too, he started going through on-court work, so he's also close to returning.
Yeah, exactly right. All right. Now we look at our sell highs. Let's review last week as well. So we went through our sell highs from last week, starting with LeBron James, 12th on the season in 9-cat. Was his season rank as of last week. In the last 7 days, 100th. And again,
Mhm.
has been really impressive in points leagues. So we'll look at his shooting splits very shortly. But yeah, that's definitely a regression there, which we expected. Essentially, every single one of these guys on this list, Darius Garland, Jordan Poole, Norman Powell, Tyler Hero, Michael Porter Jr., Nikola Vucevic, OG Anunoby, and Bilal Koulibaly regressed in 9-cat. Slightly different when you look at it from a points league perspective. So Darius Garland has just been immense, and he's continued those insane numbers. But the discrepancy and the variation between 9-cat and points league here comes down to those shooting splits, which we will take you through very shortly. Actually,
We
when we say
we did good on our
shortly.
list last week.
Yeah,
We did
exactly. We did really well. We hit on that, but some of those were pretty obvious, and they were
Mhm.
bound to just cool off a little bit. Continuing on, second page here, Dennis Schroeder, he cooled off as well. Cam Johnson has not cooled off. My God, we got that one wrong. But longer term, I think obviously he's bound to cool off. He's shooting the
Yeah.
lights out at the moment, but also not sure what's happening with the Nets. Longer term, I think it could be a little bit messy towards the end of the season. So if you can get him for a top 50 guy, you do that immediately. You don't even think twice about that one. John
Definitely.
Collins, similar situation. If you can get a top 50 guy, you make that trade immediately in a 9-cat situation and in a points league situation.
Yeah, agreed. I just don't see them maintaining this high of a value for the rest of the season. I don't think it's possible.
I don't think it's possible. John Collins has been helped by the absence of Walker Kessler. Obviously, Taylor Hendricks is done for the season, which may help John Collins down the stretch towards the end of the season. But I'm thinking they may lean on some of their younger guys as well. So Larry Markkinen is another one we spoke about earlier. I'm just wary of. Kyle Filipowski is someone that's looking promising as well. Could be a fantasy darling in years to come. Why not
Mhm.
start this season? So yeah, just be mindful of that for John Collins. But he's looking fantastic. It's almost taken him back to his glory days at the Hawks as well when he was a second rounder, which is crazy to think.
Yeah.
Karis LeVert, this was pretty obvious, but yeah, he cooled off significantly, so we got that one very right. Peyton Pritchard, not too dissimilar to his season numbers, so 80th in the last 7 days, and some of his games will be inconsistent depending on availability of his teammates. Al Horford sits back-to-backs, which there is one this week, I believe, so yeah, you obviously continue playing Peyton Pritchard, so he should be rostered in all 12 teamers.
Yep, agreed.
And finally, Benedict Mathurin. He's still on our list of sell highs, which we'll get to shortly. But from last week, he actually maintained his value. And we did say that it was a sell high last week just because there would be returns of Andrew Nembhard, Aaron Naismith. They haven't returned yet. So his value has maintained and he's putting up some still fantastic numbers. Not shooting the ball as well, still impressively, but putting up some really impressive numbers even on the rebounds, which we will take you through very shortly. Now, looking at our sell highs for this week, De'Aaron Fox has just been insane over the last few days. Domantas Sabonis has been out. He's missed a game. DeMar DeRozan has missed a couple of games as well. So De'Aaron Fox has had a lot to do, and he has actually done it. Again, we'll take you through some of those numbers shortly. J-Dub, Jalen Williams off the Thunder, we were super high on him this season, so it's great to see this. But I think third in 9-cat, that's probably really pushing it. But third over the last 7 days is just insane, and he is just a fantasy beast.
Yeah, he's been amazing now that he's been at center. I didn't expect him to go this high. I think he's still gonna finish with more like second round value. I don't think like
Mhm.
third is sustainable. But still, that's amazing. And I think a lot of people are gonna want to try and get him on their team.
I think so, and I think it's going to be hard to actually acquire him.
Hmm.
But selling high, I think, is a very good idea right now. But you would sell high for someone in the first round, and if you don't get it, if you get offered someone in the second round, I think it's probably equivalent value. So I'd probably rather ride it out with J-Dub there. Franz Wagner, he's just been killing it. He's been the actual alpha on the Magic since Paolo Banchero's been sidelined.
Yeah, especially his leaps in the main categories have just been nuts. I think he was averaging like 30 points per game over the last week. But he's really taken the lead of this team with Banchero sidelined.
Yeah, he would be in contention for All-Star, surely, particularly just over the last couple of weeks. But yeah, we'll see how that all plays out. But for us, he's a sell high. Whilst
Mhm.
I think what you need to do is, yeah, Banchero will still be sidelined for a little bit more time, but you may need to look to sell high right now, and you'll lose a little bit of value in the meantime. But I think longer term, I think it's the right call if you can get and facilitate a nice trade there.
Mhm.
Your guy, Jakob Poeltl, what's going on with Jakob?
Oh my god, he has looked fantastic, and it's so great to see this, especially after a lot of people were drafting him, like, close to around 100. Um, so the fact that he's putting up top 15 value right now, crazy. I don't think that's sustainable, but, I mean, the double doubles that he's been posting, absolutely beautiful. Down the
It is
stretch,
beautiful.
that might change a little bit, but, I mean, right now, I'll take it.
Absolutely. And I think there's still quite a few Raptors guys to come back that will impact him. But yeah, sell high for him, sell high for Jared McCain. Tyrese Maxey is questionable to return tonight. And if he does return and when he does return, that will have an obvious impact on Jared McCain's value. I still think he is worthy of a 12-team roster spot right now. But let's see how that works out. We talked about the synergy and the chemistry of the 76ers, but let's see how that plays out. We'll take you through his numbers very shortly. Dyson Daniels, your Aussie boyfriend there, 20th for Nike. That's crazy. But yeah, again, we'll take you through his numbers. Jordan Poole's still a sell high for me. Your guy,
Yeah,
RJ Barrett, he's just been smashing it. But
he's
similar
been
to
great.
Jakob Poeltl, I think you got to sell high.
I think so too, and it's also great to see this because a lot of people, mostly in category leagues, they were down on RJ Barrett, and we've been preaching this throughout the offseason too, that he was gonna have a really big season, and so far, he hasn't really disappointed.
Yeah, he was one of your sleeper picks coming into this season,
Yep.
and I thought, oh, here's Kayla with another points league guy. Obviously, he's been very good, a clear top 50 guy in points league. But yeah, he's turned it on in cats as well. Not a top 50 guy in cats, but yeah, still very much a 12-team rosterable guy. And particularly whilst all these other guys have been injured. So sell high for RJ. John Collins, we spoke about. So yeah, he's still continuing to be very good, but I still think it's a sell high. Brooke Lopez. Wow. This has
Shocking.
been a shocking turn of events because I'm pretty sure he was on our droppable list a couple of weeks ago, and I may have been a
Mhm.
little bit too harsh. When I say our list, that was my call because I just think a lot of his value is tied up in blocks, but he's really turned it around. So that's good to see. And finally, Benedict Mathurin, still a sell high, as we just spoke about earlier. Guys to still come back in, which will impact his value. Let's take you through the numbers. Starting with De'Aaron Fox. Look at those numbers. Just insane points. 41.5 points over the last 4 games. Uh, Crazy assists, good steals. We come to expect that. Fantastic from the field and putting up good 3-pointers. Just
Mhm.
practically across the board, he's been insane. And obviously, 8th best 9-cat player over the last week, 3rd in points leagues. Insane guy.
Yeah, he's looked amazing offensively, and obviously the points really stand out to me, but also the three-point shooting. He hasn't been the best three-point shooter in his career. I think he usually averages maybe between like 1.5 to 2 per game, like around that mark. But to see
Yep.
3.3, that's
Yeah.
fantastic.
He did turn it around last season. He just came out of the blue, just shot up some crazy 3-point numbers. But yeah,
Mhm.
with Sabonis missing one, DeMar DeRozan missing a couple of games as well, I think he's had to step up. And boy, has he really stepped up. But that's unsustainable once everyone's healthy. So sell high. J Dub, we spoke about it, but look at all that green.
There's
Again,
no red.
courtesy of hashtag basketball. My goodness, what an amazing fantasy talent he is. But yeah, pretty much green across the board. That's insane.
Yeah, he's looked fantastic. Even the rebounds too. That was the only part of his game that was a little bit low, but 7.3. And obviously that is because Chet Holmgren is out and he's playing that center role. But that's fantastic. And the stocks,
Yeah,
beautiful.
those stocks. Now, we spoke about that quite a number of our games where we talked about number of deflections and it wasn't translating into steal numbers last season, but it's looking like it is this season. Perhaps having some defensive-minded guys like Alex Caruso, who has been disappointing this season, but having someone alongside of him as the point of defense, maybe getting some of those other deflections and helping him get these steals, it just really boosted those stock numbers as well. 1.3 blocks as well. Playing closer to the rim, as you were saying, is also helping his numbers. We spoke about Franz, and he's just turned into an absolute superstar in the absence of Paolo Banchero.
Yeah, the 30 points per game has been fantastic. Even the threes, assists, like there's not a lot of red here. And there is that one field goal percentage that is red. But for people who are punting that category, doesn't really matter as much. And considering the amazing value that you're getting across the rest of the board, can't even complain about that.
Mm. And look how efficient he is. 6.7 assists and only 0.7 turnovers. If you're that way inclined and you do care about turnovers, and a lot of you do, and that's fine. But wow, that is super efficient. And look at that, 90% from the line on high volume as well. So yeah, absolute sell high for Franz Wagner. We spoke about Jakob Poeltl, so we won't dwell on this for too much longer, but unsustainable numbers, 30 points per game over the last three. You can't do that. Sorry, Jakob. You are good, but you're not this good.
Especially the field goal percentage, like 71% almost. I mean, yeah, the free throw, the threes, and the turnovers, not the best, but I mean, considering what you're getting in field goal percentage, points, rebounds, blocks, steals, like that's nuts. I will take that any day.
Yeah, yeah. Well, he's killing you with free throws. Nah, just
Yeah,
joking. He is, yeah,
definitely.
putting up insane numbers, but sell high because this won't continue. Jared McCain, speaking of won't be continuing, these numbers won't be continuing when Tyrese Maxey returns. So 5 threes per game, that's elite. And yes, he's a great shooter, but he can't continue this, right? Tell me he can't.
I don't think he can when everyone is healthy, but at least we know, like, if Maxi ever misses some time, like, it's going to be McCain. He's going to be the star of the show.
Yeah. I think if Maxi misses, if Paul George misses, if Embiid misses, he'll step in and he'll
Mhm.
actually do a better job than what Peyton Pritchard does when Boston Celtic misses a game as well. I think he can play that role. And for me, like I said before, he just has to be rostered right now. Let's see where it goes.
Yep.
Dyson Daniels, I don't know. Do you sell high or do you just ride it out? Because he could win you steals. And we talk about people not being able to win categories by themselves in previous seasons. There's a couple. There's Dyson Daniels for steals and there's Wemby, obviously, for blocks. If you've
Mhm.
got both on your team, and I do have both on a couple of my teams, which is nice, I think you can win those categories pretty much by themselves. But do you look to sell high? You're just going to hold on to him and see how it plays out.
Honestly, I think either way is a win-win scenario. Personally, I would rather have my fantasy boyfriend on my team. But I mean, if you wanted to sell high, like you're gonna get great value for him in return. I mean, obviously the defensive stats have been fantastic, but he's also developing into a really good two-way player. And a lot of people still weren't really sold on his offensive game heading into the season, but just because he's had those opportunities, he's really provided on both ends of the court. So yeah, you could go whichever way you prefer.
And the Hawks are getting healthier now. I'm not sure who's out injured, but DeAndre Hunter came back. Frazier
Bogdanovich is
came
back.
back.
Mhm,
Yeah, Cody Bufkin came back. Bogdanovich came back. Still put up some good numbers in the last
mhm,
game, but perhaps there's maybe less offensive load for him. And he's looked really good offensively as well. 17 points per game over the last three is really good for Dyson Daniels.
mhm. But you're looking more so at like his defensive stats too. I think even if his points were to drop a little bit, I don't think like fantasy managers will care too much just because of that amazing value that he's providing on the other end. And I don't think his minutes are going to be significantly affected.
I don't think so either. I think he's too important on defense for that to actually slide. Because if you think of Bogdanovich, he's a bit of a defensive liability, better offensive player, but defensively, I think when you've got Bogdan alongside a Trey, I think that opens them up too much. So I think they really need Dyson Daniels on the court, particularly
Mhm.
alongside a Trey Young. But I don't know, dude. All right, I'll give you a hypothetical. And I've been doing a lot of these tweets lately, but who would you rather have, Dyson Daniels or Paul George?
Dyson Daniels.
Whoa.
Totally not biased at all, by the way.
Not at all. Well, in that case, Dyson Daniels or Joel Embiid?
Oh man, Dyson Daniels all the way.
I don't know why I asked.
Wait,
Okay, there you
Wemby
go.
or Dyson Daniels? Dyson Daniels.
Okay. All right, cool. Jordan Poole, our guy. Hot start to the season. And I'll say he's cooled off. He hasn't really, if you look at those numbers, but we spoke about it a couple of weeks ago. There was in the last game, he had a really quiet game, and I could sense in some Wizards games, he's going to be the whipping boy. He's going to be blamed for certain maybe poor games or poor facilitation of the team or whatever it may be. I could see him sitting stretches of games, and um, that's just a premonition. I don't know if that's going to happen, but also look at those shooting splits. Yes, he's very, very strong and has always been strong from the free throw line, but that field goal percentage, he's a punt field goals guy. So 54% over the last 4 games, that's unsustainable. So a 9-cat ranking of 38th, I don't think that is sustainable long term. So I would be looking to sell high. And if you can get a top 50 guy, I would do so.
Yeah, I think he's gonna finish the season maybe around top 60 in
Hmm.
value. I want to say around there. But he's looked overall a lot better than he did last season. So that's very promising to see. And yeah, maybe he could be the scapegoat at times, but I think overall pretty solid so far.
Pretty solid. So you'd probably be fine with holding right now. So not necessarily a
Yeah.
sell high for you.
I would also sell high too. I think maybe depending on the league, like yeah, I don't really have him rostered in a lot of leagues, but I mean, I think you can go either way with him. I think this value is mostly here to stay for the rest of the
You
season.
could perhaps wait for one of his explosion games where he gets maybe a 35, 40-point game, which he has had this season as well. So we'll see how that happens. But Kyle Kuzma's back. I think that slightly dented his value as well over the
Mhm.
last week or so. And maybe that continues. Kyle Kuzma's still slowly getting legs under him. So we'll see how that all plays out. But for me, Jordan Poole is still a sell high. But yeah, like you said, that's fine to write it out as well. RJ Barrett, take us through your guy.
He's looked fantastic. Yeah, the efficiency is still a little bit but I mean, still, what you're getting in the other categories, the points, assists. I mean, the assists are really high right now. I did not expect that at all. He's averaging almost a near triple double over the past week, which has just been fantastic. And he's really taken a charge on this team with Scotty Barnes out. So I think now would be the perfect time to sell high.
Scotty Barnes, Manuel Quickly's out. Who
Mhm.
else is out? You've got Kelly
Okay.
Olynyk, so less of an issue there. Bruce Brown, I think, is still out. Anyone else I'm missing from the Raptors that's
I
out
think
at
those
the
are the main
moment?
guys.
They're the main
Yeah.
guys. Yeah. So, yeah, a few bodies to come back there. So, definite sell high here. But again, if you can't facilitate that trade, particularly in points, man, you just ride that one out. But I think it's
Mhm.
an absolute sell high moment. John Collins, we spoke about him. Just I've always loved his game, particularly for a roto situation. When you look at that efficiency from the field, from the line, turnovers are unusually high for him, but I guess he's doing more as well. 2.3 steals over the last week. That's unlike Johnny Collins.
Yeah, 3 stocks overall per game has been fantastic. And I believe that Walker Kessler also missed a couple of games recently too. So that's also been a reason why he's posting a lot higher value than normal.
Yep. So sell high there. Brook Lopez, I'll have to take it back. Maybe he's not droppable after all. But yeah, look at those stocks. 2.3 steals from the old man, 3.3 blocks. We somewhat expect that, even in his declining state of old age. But 20 points per game over the last three. Yeah, I know Dame has missed. I know he did come back in the last game, but Dame has missed some time. So Brook has had a little bit more offensive load on him.
Yeah, he may not be a drop, but I mean, these numbers not sustainable. And
Yeah,
that's the main thing.
that fifth in the last week. Crazy, crazy stuff. So yeah, definite sell high, and I'd be, to be honest, I'd take a top 70 guy right now, but you could
Mhm.
probably even demand a little bit higher based on the last week. And finally, we spoke about him already, Benedict Mathurin. So he's made this list 2 weeks in a row, and for good reason. Like we said, Naismith and Nempard still to come back in. But yeah, look at those rebounds. Rebound numbers of 8.3 rebounds per game over the last four. That's insane for him.
That's amazing. And even offensively too, he's really stepped up. He's seeing really good quality minutes, 33 per game. The efficiency stats look pretty good. Assists and turnovers are where the red are here, but I mean, you're not really worrying about that, and you're going to ride it out with the injuries
Yeah,
or
and you
sell
don't
high.
expect those assists to
Mhm.
be high when you've got Tyrese Halliburton and TJ McConnell, Nempard when
Yep.
he's back. You don't expect that to be any higher, really. But yeah, sell high moment for Benedict Mathurin. Make sure you do it now because it won't be too long until those other guys return. Yeah, that's a wrap, Kayla. That is our only show for this week. Take us through anything else that's going on right now.
Yeah, I have one article in the works. I won't reveal it yet. But that'll be coming out hopefully sometime this week or next week. And of course, another episode of Bitches Be Balling coming today.
Bitches Be Balling. Make sure you follow Bitches Be Balling. So subscribe to their channel.
Thank you.
Make sure you give them a follow on Twitter. Speaking of Twitter, you can find Kayla at Kayla_Fonte, and you can find myself at NBA Fantasy Bible. We're also over on Blue Sky.
Mm.
So I haven't got that in our little graphic here, but make sure you follow us on Blue Sky as well. Obviously, give us a like and follow on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and of course, X. But until next time, Kayla, thank you very much. Thank you,
Thank you.
guys.
See
See
you
ya.
then.